Brenna thought Daniel was just a friend, someone safe, someone she could laugh with, trust with her secrets. But one stormy night, everything changed. Secrets were revealed, desires ignited, and a love she never expected demanded to be noticed. Will friendship survive when the heart wants more? Welcome to Prime Tale, where we bring you stories of love, secrets, and unforgettable moments. If you enjoy heartfelt stories, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to follow every twist, every secret, and every romance with Prime Tale. In a world where love feels fragile, Brenna and Daniel have built a bond from trust, laughter, and quiet moments. But when shadows from the past return and desire becomes undeniable, they are forced to face a choice. Let fear control them, or surrender fully to a love that could last forever. This is their story, a journey of passion, secrets, and a promise that nothing, not storms, not shadows, not even the past can break. They said real friendships were rare. If that was true, then what Brenna and Daniel had was something special. She heard it often from friends, co-workers, even strangers who noticed the way they laughed together. "You two are lucky," they would say. "Not everyone finds a friendship like that." And Brenna believed them. Daniel had been in her life for 3 steady years. 3 uncomplicated years. No drama. No confusion. Just comfort. The kind of comfort that made silence feel safe instead of awkward. They met on an ordinary afternoon, one of those moments that never feels important until much later. Brenna had spilled coffee on herself at a small cafe near her workplace. Flustered and embarrassed, Daniel had laughed, handed her napkins, and made a joke that somehow eased the moment. That was it. That was the beginning. From then on, they became inseparable in the quietest way possible. No labels. No expectations. Just 2 people who chose each other's company again and again. Daniel knew Brenna's routines better than anyone else. He knew when she needed space and when she needed company. He recognized the exact tone of her voice when she said she was fine but wasn't. And Brenna trusted him completely. He was the one she called when her day fell apart. The one who stayed on the line until her breathing slowed. The one who remembered the smallest details no one else noticed. But to her it was simple. They were just friends. That's what she told herself when people looked at them too closely. That's what she said when her mother asked why she wasn't dating anyone seriously. That's what she repeated whenever her chest felt tight hearing Daniel talk about someone else. Friends don't fall in love, she believed. Friends don't cross lines. So she ignored the way her pulse shifted when he said her name softly. She ignored how safe she felt walking beside him at night. She ignored how his presence felt dangerously close to home. Because friendships like theirs were rare. And she didn't want to ruin it by asking the wrong question. Daniel, however, had learned the art of silence. He hid his feelings behind laughter and loyalty. Behind being the dependable friend. The one who never asked for more, even when his heart wanted everything. When Brenna smiled at him, he felt it deep in his chest. When she leaned against him, he felt it everywhere. But he said nothing. Because loving your best friend quietly felt safer than losing her entirely. To the world, they were the perfect friendship. 2 people who fit too naturally together. What no one saw was how close love already was to the surface. Brenna never noticed when the calls started becoming a habit. It happened quietly, the way most important things do. At first, it was occasional. A quick call after a long day. A few minutes to laugh about something small. But soon, those minutes stretched into hours, and the clock stopped mattering. Daniel was always the last voice she heard before sleep. She would lie on her bed, lights off, staring at the ceiling while his voice filled the room through her phone. Sometimes they talked about nothing at all, random thoughts, half-finished stories, jokes that only made sense to them. Other nights were different. Those were the nights when Brenna's voice softened without her realizing it. When she admitted she was tired, overwhelmed, unsure of herself. When the world felt heavier than usual. Daniel listened. Always. He never rushed her. Never interrupted. He let silence exist between words, as if he understood that sometimes comfort didn't need advice. You don't have to be strong all the time, he told her once, his voice low and steady. I know, she replied quietly. But it helps when you're there. She didn't think twice about saying it. He did. Daniel lay on his own bed, phone pressed to his ear, staring into the dark. Every late-night call felt like standing too close to a fire, warm, comforting, and dangerous all at once. He learned the rhythm of her breathing when she was close to sleep. He learned when she smiled without saying it. He learned how to hear the unspoken fears behind her calm tone. Sometimes she fell asleep mid-call. Daniel never hung up. He stayed, listening to her slow breathing, knowing he was crossing a line he pretended didn't exist. A friend wouldn't stay on the phone like this. A friend wouldn't feel his chest tighten at the thought of her dreaming. But he told himself it was harmless. Brenna trusted him. And he would never betray that. Still, there were moments that lingered too long. Like the night she whispered, "Promise you won't disappear someday." "I won't," he answered instantly. Not even thinking. Not even hesitating. She smiled at that. He could hear it. "You say that like you mean it." "I do," he said softly. After the call ended, Brenna stared at her phone for a long time. Her heart felt strangely full, and strangely unsettled. She told herself it was normal. Friends leaned on each other. Friends talked late. Friends cared deeply. Yet, deep down, a quiet thought stirred one she pushed away before it could take shape. Daniel turned his phone face down and closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come. Loving her was starting to feel heavier than silence. And yet, he waited for her call the next night anyway. Because some connections don't need names to feel real. And some late-night calls mean more than either heart is ready to admit. If anyone asked Brenna why she trusted Daniel so deeply, she wouldn't have had a dramatic answer. She would have said something simple. He's always there. And he was. Not in loud, attention-seeking ways. Not with grand gestures meant to be noticed. Daniel showed up quietly, consistently, like he understood that presence mattered more than promises. When her car refused to start on a rainy morning, he was already on his way before she finished explaining the problem. When she forgot to eat while drowning in work, food appeared at her door without questions. When she had a bad day and didn't feel like talking, he sat beside her anyway, comfortable in the silence. Brenna never had to ask twice. Sometimes she didn't ask at all. Daniel somehow knew. He noticed the small changes, the way her messages grew shorter, the way her laughter sounded forced, the way she stopped sharing details when something was wrong. He paid attention in ways that felt natural to him, but unfamiliar to her. "You don't have to come," she said once, standing in the doorway after a long, exhausting day. "I know," he replied. "I wanted to." Those words stayed with her longer than they should have. Daniel told himself it was instinct. That friends took care of each other. That loyalty didn't need an explanation. But the truth was harder to ignore in moments like this. He rearranged his life around hers without realizing when it started. Her problems felt personal. Her happiness mattered too much. When she smiled because of something he did, it felt like a quiet victory. Yet, he never crossed the line. Not once. When she rested her head on his shoulder during a movie night, he stayed still, afraid that breathing too deeply might reveal too much. When she held his hand absent-mindedly while talking, he let her, then spent the rest of the night convincing himself it meant nothing. Brenna noticed his presence in the background of her life like a steady rhythm. Reliable. Constant. Comforting. She never questioned it. Why would she? Daniel had become part of her normal. And normal felt safe. But there were moments, small, fleeting ones, when she caught him looking at her a second too long. When his smile softened in a way she couldn't explain. When his voice changed slightly when he said her name. She brushed it off. Everyone needed someone dependable. And Daniel was simply that. What she didn't realize was how much effort it took for him to remain exactly where she placed him. How much restraint lived behind his calm expression. How often he chose silence over honesty. Because showing up for her was easy. Admitting why he did it. That was the hardest part. And as long as she kept calling him her friend, Daniel would keep showing up, hiding his heart in plain sight. Comfort has a way of bending rules without anyone noticing. Brenna and Daniel didn't talk about boundaries. There was no contract, no labels, no rules. Yet somehow they both knew exactly how close was too close. Until one day, the line disappeared entirely. It started small. A hand lingering a second too long on a shoulder. A hug that felt warmer than usual. Texts that arrived at midnight, not for emergencies, but just because someone needed to hear a familiar voice. Brenna noticed these things at first. She told herself it was nothing, that Daniel was just thoughtful, loyal, caring. And he noticed her noticing, of course. But instead of pulling back, he allowed himself the tiniest indulgences, touches, glances, small words that hovered just beyond friendship. One evening, they were sprawled on her couch, sharing a blanket, watching a movie neither cared about. Brenna yawned and leaned her head against his shoulder. She didn't even think about it. It was natural, comfortable, safe. Daniel froze for just a second. Not in alarm, more like recognition. Recognition of something he could never voice aloud. He swallowed hard and let her stay there. Because that was easier than admitting his heart was skipping. As weeks passed, the small moments became more frequent. Texts that lingered late into the night. A hand brushing hers that felt electric. Inside jokes that made their eyes meet in ways no one else could understand. The world around them didn't know the difference. Their friends still called it a normal friendship. Their families saw nothing suspicious. Only Brenna and Daniel could feel the invisible line slipping further, until sometimes it didn't exist at all. She laughed at his jokes in a way that made her chest tighten. He lingered by her side, just a little longer than any friend should. Neither spoke about it. Neither crossed a word out of fear. Yet both knew deep down that the rules were fading. And sometimes Brenna caught herself wondering, if friendship could feel this intense, what did love feel like? Daniel already knew. He felt it in every touch, every smile, every silent moment they shared. And he was terrified. Because once boundaries fade, hearts don't easily forget. Daniel had never believed in fairy tales. He didn't need them. Not until Brenna smiled. It wasn't a dramatic smile. Not the kind that lights up a room or belongs on a movie poster. It was simple, quiet, yet devastating. The kind of smile that made everything else fade. He noticed it in little moments. When she laughed at something trivial, when her eyes crinkled just so while reading a text, or when she spoke about things that mattered to her. Every time, Daniel felt it. Deep, aching, impossible to ignore. One evening, they were walking home after dinner. Brenna paused at a streetlight, laughing at something he said. That smile, bright, effortless, caught him completely off guard. He stopped walking without realizing it. She turned to look at him, expecting him to grin or say something. Instead, Daniel felt his chest tighten. Her happiness had become his weakness. Her laughter, his quiet torment. Her smile, a weight he could never admit. Brenna noticed the pause but didn't question it. She smiled again, thinking maybe he was just lost in thought. Little did she know, Daniel's thoughts were only about her. About the way his heart felt like it might break if she stopped smiling. About the way he longed to tell her everything he never dared. Because the truth was simple and terrifying. He could no longer separate love from friendship. Every shared moment, every small gesture, every laugh, they were slowly building something bigger. Something he wanted desperately to keep hidden. Yet, hiding it was growing harder by the day. Every time Brenna looked at him with trust in her eyes, Daniel's resolve weakened. He had promised himself long ago he would not risk their friendship. But now every smile chipped away at that promise. And for the first time, Daniel realized that friendship might not be enough. Because her smile had become more than a moment of joy. It had become his heart's undoing. Brenna noticed things. Subtle shifts. Moments that felt charged, though she couldn't explain why. She hadn't asked the question, not out loud. Not yet. It wasn't something she could name. It was the way Daniel's eyes lingered a second too long, the warmth of his hand brushing hers by accident or maybe not by accident, the quiet intensity in his voice whenever he said her name. Friends didn't do that. Not like this. And yet, she told herself it was harmless. He had always been thoughtful, always careful, always present. Still, late at night, when she lay in bed replaying their day, a question hovered at the edge of her mind. Does he feel the same way I don't realize I feel? Brenna brushed the thought aside. Friends didn't think in those terms. Friends didn't question what their hearts wanted. But every interaction between them was slowly rewriting the rules. Daniel noticed the question she never asked. He heard it in the pauses, in the words left unsaid. Every time she laughed or looked at him in a way that made his chest tighten, he felt it. The weight of unspoken truth. He wanted to answer it. Wanted to admit everything. But he couldn't risk it, not yet. Instead, he stayed. Waited. Held his emotions in check. Smiled when she smiled. Laughed when she laughed. Sat silently when she needed him to. It was torture. But he told himself it was worth it. Because being near her even as just a friend was better than losing her completely. And Brenna, blissfully unaware, continued to trust him. Continued to rely on him. Continued to take his loyalty for granted. Neither of them spoke the question. But both of them felt it. And that unasked question hung between them like a delicate thread ready to unravel everything when the time came. Some truths are too heavy to carry. Some feelings are too fragile to admit. So Brenna and Daniel both told themselves a lie. They called it friendship. They called it loyalty. They called it comfort. But deep down they knew. Daniel kept telling himself that what he felt wasn't dangerous. That being her friend was enough. That the closeness, the late-night calls, the lingering touches, the small smiles, they were all harmless. And Brenna. She reassured herself too. She told herself that Daniel's constant presence was just what a good friend did. That the flutter in her chest when he looked at her was imagination. That the way she missed him when he wasn't around was normal. They both accepted the lie, because admitting the truth would change everything. One evening, Daniel walked Brenna home after work. The air was cool, and the streetlights flickered softly, casting a golden glow around them. They talked about mundane things, the weather, her day, a funny coworker story, but the silence between their words was louder than the words themselves. Daniel's hand brushed hers. Not deliberately, he told himself. Not a touch meant to signal anything. And Brenna felt a jolt but quickly convinced herself it was nothing. "See you tomorrow?" he asked, his voice casual. "Yeah," she replied, smiling. "Tomorrow." They both knew it was more than tomorrow, that the tomorrow they imagined in their heads wasn't the same as the one they described. But they said nothing, because the lie was easier. The lie protected them. The lie kept their hearts in place, even if it quietly broke them at the edges. That night, Brenna lay in bed thinking of him, the unspoken tension wrapping around her like a soft, invisible chain. And somewhere else, Daniel did the exact same thing. They were friends, they told themselves. But neither could deny that friendship had begun to feel dangerously like love. And some lies, once accepted, are impossible to ignore. It happened quietly, almost imperceptibly. Brenna and Daniel were sitting on the couch, sharing the quiet of a rainy afternoon. The sound of raindrops tapped gently against the window, filling the room with a rhythm that made words unnecessary. She reached for the blanket on his lap and tugged it around her shoulders. He moved closer instinctively, as if the space between them had always been meant for this. And then it happened. A glance. A touch. A heartbeat that thumped too loudly. Brenna looked up and met his eyes. Something flickered there, something she had never seen before. Something warm, intense, unspoken. Her own heart skipped, and for the first time, she felt a pull she couldn't ignore. It was subtle, yet undeniable. Daniel noticed it too. He noticed the way her lips curved when she smiled softly at nothing, the slight hesitation in her movements, the way her gaze lingered on him longer than necessary. He wanted to speak, to tell her everything his heart had been holding, but he stayed silent. Because some moments are meant to be felt, not explained. The room seemed smaller somehow, as if the world had disappeared around them. Only the two of them remained, suspended in a fragile bubble of possibility. Neither moved, neither spoke, but both knew the balance had shifted. The moment passed, as all moments do, but it left something behind, a quiet understanding, a dangerous awareness. They were no longer just friends. Something had changed. Brenna forced herself to look away, pretending to read the book on the table. Her pulse raced. Her thoughts swirled. Yet she didn't question it aloud. Daniel stayed still, letting the silence linger, knowing that once spoken, this moment could never be undone. And maybe that was the point. Some truths aren't meant for words. Some truths are meant for the heart to feel, in stolen moments between the ordinary. This moment had felt different, and both of them knew, somewhere deep inside, that nothing would ever be the same again. Sometimes love doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it hides quietly, in the spaces no one else notices, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. For Brenna and Daniel, love had been there all along, camouflaged as friendship. It was in the little things no one else could see. The way Daniel remembered the smallest details of her day, the name of a stranger who smiled at her, the way she liked her coffee seemed innocent. But to him it meant everything. The way Brenna laughed at his bad jokes, even when no one else would, wasn't just friendship. It was a signal, subtle and unspoken, of how much she valued him in ways she couldn't name. They walked through life side by side, their feelings quietly woven into ordinary moments. Daniel texting her first thing in the morning, without realizing he wanted more than good morning. Brenna adjusting his scarf when the wind blew too hard, not noticing the warmth that flooded him. A shared umbrella in the rain, their hands brushing more than once, leaving sparks neither acknowledged. Everyone saw two friends who fit perfectly together. But only Brenna and Daniel felt the invisible thread that tied their hearts closer than either dared admit. Even when they laughed together, even when they argued about trivial things, love hid in plain sight. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun dip behind the horizon, Daniel reached out to steady Brenna's hand as a gust of wind rattled the railing. "It's nothing," he said softly. But she looked at him, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "Nothing. Just making sure you're okay," he replied, his voice quiet, careful. And for a moment they held each other's gaze, both aware that something had shifted. Something unspoken, powerful and terrifyingly real. They both smiled, pretending it was normal. Pretending it was nothing. But it wasn't. Love had been hiding in plain sight all along. And now it was starting to make itself known. The day had been ordinary as any day could be when two people were quietly falling in love. Brenna and Daniel walked home together, their shoulders brushing, hands close but not touching. They spoke casually, laughed softly, and occasionally glanced at each other in ways that would have seemed ordinary to anyone else, but to them, it felt electric. Neither had spoken the truth. Neither had admitted the feelings that had been growing for months, unnoticed by the world but undeniable to their hearts. At a cafe stop, Brenna laughed at something Daniel said, a full, heartfelt laugh. He watched her, trying not to let the way his chest tightened show. "You okay?" she asked, noticing him staring. "Yeah," he said quickly, forcing a grin. "Just thinking." They both knew he wasn't thinking about work or the weather. He was thinking about her. About how much he cared. About how impossible it felt to stay silent anymore. And Brenna, she felt it too. That same invisible pull, a quiet ache she could no longer ignore. When they reached her doorstep, neither moved first. Neither wanted to break the spell of closeness they had created over years of quiet friendship. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice low but steady. "Brenna, I'm glad we're friends." She smiled softly, but her eyes searched his. "Me too." It was safe. It was simple. It was a lie they could both live with. For now. Because the truth, the full, terrifying truth that they were no longer just friends, remained unspoken. And that unspoken truth hung between them like a fragile thread, waiting for the day when one word, one glance, one moment, would unravel it completely. As Brenna stepped inside, she waved without looking back. Daniel watched her go, feeling a mix of longing and fear. Two hearts. One unspoken truth. And somewhere deep inside, they both knew that friendship had become too powerful to remain just friendship for much longer. The morning felt lighter, yet heavier at the same time. Brenna didn't know why, but the air around her seemed charged. She and Daniel met at their usual cafe, the one they had frequented for years. Nothing had changed. Same table, same chairs, same quiet corner, but something felt different. Daniel arrived with his usual smile, but Brenna noticed a subtle shift in him. A hesitation, a softness, a weight in his eyes she hadn't seen before. "Hey," he said, setting down his coffee. His hand brushed hers lightly as he did, and for a moment, Brenna felt the familiar jolt. "Hey," she replied, pretending it didn't affect her, though her heartbeat betrayed her calm tone. They settled into their usual routine, sipping coffee, chatting about work, laughing at small things, but everything had a new layer. Every glance lasted a little longer. Every laugh carried a hint of something unspoken. It was a day where friendship felt heavier. A day where their hearts began to push against the invisible walls they had built around themselves. Neither spoke the words, but both felt them. The tension was there, subtle yet undeniable. And in that quiet corner of the cafe, Brenna realized something. She couldn't ignore it anymore. Daniel felt it too. The truth he had hidden behind jokes and loyalty was beginning to surface. The thought of her possibly noticing terrified him, yet he longed for it. Some moments sneak up on you. Some feelings don't wait for permission. And today, everything felt different. It happened without warning. Brenna was laughing at something Daniel said, a small joke about their coworker, and she didn't notice the way his gaze lingered. He was staring, not in a casual, friendly way, but in a way that made his chest tighten and his hands fidget in his lap. That glance lasted a second too long, maybe two, maybe three, and suddenly the air between them felt heavier. Brenna looked up mid-laugh and caught his eyes. For a heartbeat, the world paused. Neither spoke. Neither moved. She quickly looked away, telling herself it was nothing. Just a glance. Friends do that all the time. Right? Daniel, however, couldn't look away. Not yet. That one glance said everything he hadn't dared to say for months. It spoke of longing, of silent love, of words trapped behind a smile he forced for her comfort. He wanted to tell her right then, right now, but the fear of losing her held his tongue. So instead, he smiled softly, letting the moment fade into ordinary conversation. But the spark remained. All day, Brenna found herself thinking about it. That glance. That weight behind it. The strange flutter in her chest she couldn't explain. She didn't know it yet, but Daniel's feelings were no longer a secret between them. They were visible in small, fleeting moments, impossible to ignore. And sometimes a look says more than words ever could. Sometimes it's not the big moments that reveal the heart, it's the small ones. Brenna noticed them first. The way Daniel always remembered her favorite coffee, even when she forgot to mention it. The way he slid her jacket over her shoulders when the wind picked up, even without a word. The way he adjusted the chair when she sat too far back, just enough to be closer without saying anything. These gestures were subtle, every day, almost invisible to anyone else. But to Brenna, they felt intimate, personal, special. She caught herself smiling at them, her chest warming in a way that made her heart beat faster. She told herself they were just acts of kindness, just friendship. Daniel, of course, noticed the effect. He saw her smile brighten at the smallest things he did. He saw her hands linger on the mug a second longer, her eyes soften in ways he couldn't describe. Each time, his heart swelled, and each time, he reminded himself to stay silent, to remain her friend, to hide the truth behind gestures she would never question. Yet, the gestures were never unnoticed. They were his language, a language Brenna understood in moments she didn't even realize. The brushing of a hand, the careful adjustment of a scarf, the light touch on her shoulder all spoke louder than any words could. That evening, when they walked home together, Daniel carried her bag for her. It wasn't necessary Brenna was perfectly capable, but he did it anyway. She noticed. She smiled softly. "Thanks," she said. "Of course," he replied, letting his fingers brush hers for just a second longer than needed. Neither of them spoke about it. They didn't need to. Because some things are understood without words. Because some hearts communicate in gestures, not confessions. And in the quiet of those small acts, love was making itself impossible to ignore. Jealousy doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers, hiding behind a smile, a glance, or a silence. Brenna noticed it first. One of her co-workers, casual and friendly, had lingered a little too long while joking with Daniel. Nothing serious, just a laugh, a brief touch on the shoulder. But her chest tightened unexpectedly. Why did it bother her so much? She shook her head, blaming herself. It was silly. Friends don't get jealous of other friends, she told herself. And yet, the feeling lingered, subtle but persistent. Daniel noticed it too. Not her jealousy exactly, he didn't know that, but he felt it. The slight hesitation in her voice, the way she seemed quieter than usual. The faint distance she tried to hide, yet couldn't. Inside, he was quietly panicked. The thought of anyone else sharing even a fragment of her attention made his chest ache. And still, he didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't reveal the storm inside him. Because he couldn't. Brenna's feelings and his own were tangled together, unspoken, fragile. To act on jealousy would be to admit more than either of them were ready for. That afternoon, they walked home in silence. The world around them continued as usual, cars honking, kids playing, but between Brenna and Daniel, a subtle tension hovered. A tension neither fully understood, but both could feel. She glanced at him, trying to mask her emotions with a small smile. He returned it, but his own eyes held a storm he refused to name. And in that quiet space, love and jealousy danced together, unseen but undeniable. Because sometimes, feelings speak louder when left unspoken. And sometimes, the heart notices things the mind refuses to name. Brenna noticed it the first day Daniel had to leave early for a work trip. She didn't think it would affect her so much after all. It was just a few days. But the moment he walked away, a quiet ache settled in her chest. She missed his presence more than she expected. Not just the physical comfort of him being there, but the warmth of his attention, the way his energy seemed to fill the space around her. Even a few hours apart felt heavier than she could admit. Meanwhile, Daniel sat on the train, staring out the window, thinking about Brenna. He hadn't realized how much he depended on her presence until the distance hit. Every text, every call, every fleeting message from her felt like a lifeline. He tried to focus on work to push his thoughts away, but it was impossible. She had always been close to him, in ways he had hidden even from himself. And now, separated by a few miles, he realized just how much she meant. Brenna, too, found herself constantly checking her phone. Waiting. Hoping. Wishing for a message that said nothing more than thinking of you. Knowing that would be enough. It was in these small absences that their feelings became undeniable. Every silence screamed louder than any word. Every empty moment highlighted what they had been denying for months. Neither wanted to admit it. Neither wanted to confront the truth that their friendship was no longer just friendship. Yet, every mile, every hour apart made it clearer. They were no longer just friends. And sometimes, the heart feels the absence before the mind understands the danger. Some words are too heavy to speak. Some truths are too fragile to risk. Brenna and Daniel both knew this, though neither admitted it. That evening, they met at their usual park bench, the place where so many of their quiet conversations had happened. The sunset painted the sky in gold and pink, casting long shadows over the paths. Brenna wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in her throat. She could feel the weight of her emotions pressing down, begging to be released, yet she stayed silent. Daniel felt the same. He wanted to confess, to bridge the invisible gap that had grown between them since the day he left for his trip. But fear gripped him. One word could change everything, and he wasn't ready to risk it, not yet. So they talked about safe things. Work. Coffee. A movie they had both seen. Nothing dangerous. Nothing revealing. But every pause, every glance, every subtle touch carried meaning they refused to speak aloud. Brenna shifted slightly, her shoulder brushing his. He didn't move his hand away, though he told himself it was accidental. It wasn't. He wanted to reach for her to hold her hand, but stopped himself. Daniel looked at her, eyes soft, heart heavy. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah. I'm fine," she replied, forcing a small smile. Her heart, however, screamed otherwise. They sat in silence after that, both aware of the tension, both pretending it didn't exist. Sometimes, the weight of unsaid words is heavier than the words themselves. Sometimes, what's left unspoken carries more meaning than 1,000 confessions. And in that quiet park, Brenna and Daniel sat together, hearts full, lips sealed, eyes speaking the language they couldn't say aloud. Brenna woke up feeling the weight of something she couldn't name. It wasn't exhaustion. It wasn't worry. It was the tension between her and Daniel, the words left unspoken, the glances that said more than they should, the small gestures that meant everything. Even her phone felt heavier that morning, buzzing with his usual good morning text. She read it, her chest tightening, her fingers lingering over the screen. Daniel, meanwhile, sat at his desk, staring at the blank screen of his laptop. His heart wasn't in work. His mind wasn't in the emails he was supposed to answer. It was with her. Every small detail from yesterday replayed in his head: the way she laughed, the way her hand brushed his, the soft words she said that carried a weight neither dared voice. It happened during lunch at their favorite cafe. Brenna laughed at something Daniel said, a silly comment about their coworker, and glanced up. That's when it happened. Their eyes met. And in that look, everything they had been hiding for months flashed between them. Longing, hesitation, fear, desire. Neither spoke. Neither moved. Sometimes love doesn't need words. Sometimes it speaks in the smallest gestures. Brenna and Daniel were walking through the park that evening, leaves crunching softly beneath their feet. The air was crisp, and the sun was beginning to dip behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. As they reached a narrow path, Brenna bumped slightly into Daniel while adjusting her bag. Their fingers brushed just lightly, almost accidentally, but the effect was electric. Brenna froze for a moment, her pulse racing. She looked at him, unsure if he felt it too. Silence can be loud, especially when hearts are speaking louder than words. Brenna and Daniel sat side by side on the park bench, the sunset painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and pink. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Every heartbeat, every glance, every subtle movement conveyed what their lips couldn't. Brenna's fingers twitched as she adjusted the scarf around her neck. Daniel noticed, his chest tightening. He wanted to reach out to brush a stray hair from her face, to tell her everything his heart had been screaming for months, but fear anchored him in place. It was a small slip, almost invisible. But to Brenna and Daniel, it felt like the ground had shifted beneath them. They were walking back from the park, quiet after their long, silent moments on the bench. Daniel paused to tie his shoelace. Brenna leaned against a lamppost, watching him, feeling her chest tighten. I like spending time with you," Daniel said suddenly, almost as if the words had slipped out on their own. Brenna froze. Her mind spun. Did he just say that? She looked up at him, heart hammering, and saw him staring at the ground, cheeks slightly red. He hadn't meant to say it, he hadn't planned to, but somehow the truth had escaped. The night air was cool, and the streets glowed under the soft light of the lamps. Brenna and Daniel walked side by side, both acutely aware of the shift that had happened between them. Neither wanted to speak too much, but neither wanted silence either. "So, did you hear about the coffee machine breaking at work?" Daniel asked, forcing a casual tone. Brenna laughed a little too loudly, a little too nervously. The sound didn't just carry amusement. It carried tension, excitement, and the flutter of something new. The night had grown quieter. The streets were nearly empty, and the soft hum of distant traffic filled the space between Brenna and Daniel. They stopped at a corner, the tension from earlier still hanging heavily in the air. Brenna looked at him, and suddenly the floodgates opened. I don't know why I feel like this," she admitted softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel's heart lurched. She had said it, just a piece of what they both had been holding back, but it was enough to break the dam. They were walking down the sidewalk, still caught in the glow of their shared confession. Words had been spoken, hearts revealed, but neither had moved closer physically yet. A sudden shout from across the street broke the moment. Brenna stepped back instinctively, and before she could react, a cyclist swerved unexpectedly toward her. Daniel's reflexes were faster. He lunged forward, grabbing her by the arm just in time to pull her out of danger. The sky darkened suddenly, and rain began to fall in heavy, glittering sheets. Brenna and Daniel were caught without umbrellas, laughing nervously as droplets soaked their hair and clothes. The world around them blurred, streets glistening, people running for cover, but in that moment, nothing else existed except the two of them. Sunlight streamed softly through Brenna's window, casting a warm glow over her bedroom. She stirred awake, heart still racing from the night before. The memory of Daniel's confession, their embrace in the rain, and the undeniable connection they had shared made her chest flutter with happiness. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Daniel. "Morning, love. Did you sleep well?" She smiled, fingers trembling slightly as she typed back. "Better than ever. Last night was perfect." It started with a simple message. Brenna was scrolling through her phone when she noticed a text from a coworker of Daniel's. It was harmless, joking about a work project, but something in her chest tightened unexpectedly. Why did it bother her so much? She tried to brush it off. "He's my boyfriend now," she reminded herself. "I have nothing to worry about." But the truth was undeniable. Jealousy had crept in, small and quiet, but persistent. It was just a simple text, or at least, that's how Daniel meant it. Brenna was scrolling through her phone when she saw a message from one of Daniel's old friends. "Miss hanging out with you." Her chest tightened. She knew it was innocent, just friendly, but a small seed of doubt had been planted. The afternoon had been long, filled with small misunderstandings and lingering tension. Brenna felt the weight of doubt pressing on her chest, and Daniel could sense it too. As they walked together along the quiet streets, Brenna slowed her pace, letting her shoulders slump. Daniel noticed immediately and stopped, gently turning her to face him. "Hey, talk to me," he said softly. Even in love, not everything is spoken. Brenna and Daniel were sitting in the park one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Everything seemed perfect, yet both carried thoughts they hadn't shared. Brenna's mind wandered to a worry she hadn't voiced. Her fear that Daniel's old friends might misunderstand their relationship, that tiny doubts could grow if she didn't trust fully. She didn't want to admit it yet, afraid it would seem petty. That night, Brenna and Daniel sat on her balcony, the city lights twinkling below. The air was cool, the night quiet, and for the first time, they felt safe enough to speak without fear. "I've been holding a lot in," Brenna admitted softly, staring at her hands. "About everything. About my worries, my doubts. Even about us." Brenna looked at Daniel, heart swelling. "We can handle this, together," she said softly. He smiled, pulling her close. Always. Love, they knew, wasn't just the private moments. It was also facing the world hand in hand, hearts aligned, unshaken by whispers or glances. And together, Brenna and Daniel felt ready for anything. "Brenna, you didn't tell me you were meeting someone?" he asked, voice tense. I just thought it was casual," she replied, confused by his tone. "Why does it matter?" "It matters because—" "I don't know," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "It just feels like you're drifting away sometimes." Brenna's chest tightened. "I'm not drifting. I just needed a break. I can't be with you 24/7. The rain fell gently outside, matching the quiet reflection in Brenna and Daniel's hearts. After their first real fight, they had spent the day apart, letting emotion settle. But now, sitting together on Brenna's couch, wrapped in a soft blanket, the tension had melted into understanding. Brenna was sipping her morning coffee when a knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She frowned. No one was supposed to visit. Daniel wasn't home yet, and she wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, she opened the door and froze. "Brenna," a familiar voice said, tinged with surprise. Lila's gaze shifted to Daniel, her tone serious. "Because some things from back then could affect you now. I didn't want you to find out the hard way." Brenna's heart began to race. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice tight. Lila hesitated, then continued. "You had a friend back then. Someone you trusted completely. But there were things you didn't know about mistakes, about lies, about feelings that weren't clear at the time. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing the tension. He glanced at Brenna, who looked pale, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Brenna's hands trembled as Lila took a seat across from her. Daniel stood quietly nearby, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "I didn't want to tell you this before," Lila began, her voice low and serious. "But it's time you knew the truth. Back in high school, I accidentally revealed something about you that changed how someone saw you." Brenna's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "I can't believe that all this time," Brenna murmured, voice tight with emotion. "I thought I had moved on. I thought the past wouldn't matter." Daniel squeezed her hand. "The past is part of who you are. But it doesn't define us. We'll face it together." Brenna nodded, trying to believe it. But then, a familiar voice called from across the street. What if her past mistakes ruined the trust she had built with Daniel? What if Daniel's love faltered once he saw the full picture? She replayed every moment in her head, the confession in the rain, their first fight, the laughter, the hugs, the promises. And yet, doubt crept in like a shadow, whispering fears she didn't want to hear. Daniel knocked softly on her door, peeking in. "Hey, you okay?" The next morning, Brenna and Daniel met at the park, a quiet place they often went to when they needed space to think and talk. The air was crisp, and the leaves crunched softly beneath their feet. Brenna arrived first, pacing slightly, her mind still tangled with doubts from last night. Daniel appeared moments later, a gentle smile on his face, holding 2 cups of coffee. In that moment, Brenna realized that love wasn't just about happiness or passion. It was about facing hidden truths, confronting fear, and trusting that together they could survive anything. The past had surfaced, yes, but instead of breaking them, it made their bond stronger. Because some truths, when revealed, only deepen love. The weight of the secrets and revelations left Brenna trembling. She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands as tears streamed down her cheeks. Daniel sat beside her immediately, wrapping his arms around her. "Shoo, it's okay," he whispered, pulling her close. "You're safe. I'm here. I won't let anything hurt you." The morning sun poured through the window, casting a soft glow over Brenna and Daniel. Last night's tears and confessions had left them exhausted but closer than ever. Brenna sat across from Daniel at the small breakfast table, fidgeting slightly. I don't want any doubts between us ever again," she admitted softly. As the night fell, wrapping them in its quiet beauty, Brenna and Daniel knew one thing for certain. Their love wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Stronger than before, and ready to face whatever came next. Together. Sunlight spilled into Brenna's bedroom, warm and golden. She stretched lazily, smiling at the soft sound of Daniel's laughter from the kitchen. He was making breakfast, humming a tune she couldn't place. Brenna tiptoed quietly, planning a little playful revenge for the way he had teased her yesterday about burning toast. Sometimes, love wasn't just about desire, it was about choosing the person beside you, every single time, despite fleeting distractions or moments of doubt. Every glance between Brenna and Daniel felt electric. Even while walking through the busy streets, their hands brushed, eyes locked, and smiles lingered longer than necessary. "Shoulder. I've never felt this way before," she whispered. Like my heart could burst from happiness and longing all at once. Daniel kissed the top of her head. "I feel the same. Every day, every moment. I fall for you all over again." Nodded. "I love every part of you. Past, present, flaws. Everything. And I want to show you in every way possible how much you mean to me." The tension between desire and tenderness hung in the air, igniting something deep in both of them. Daniel leaned in, and Brenna didn't pull away. Their lips met in a kiss slow and deliberate, soft at first, then deepening with longing. It wasn't just passion, it was relief, trust, and the culmination of months of love, tests, and emotional growth. When they finally pulled back, their foreheads rested together, breathless. That night, they talked for hours, confessing fears, dreams, and desires. Daniel revealed insecurities he rarely shared. Brenna admitted moments of doubt she had barely acknowledged. Vulnerability became intimacy. Each confession made their bond deeper, stronger, unshakable. Love was no longer just joy or passion, it was complete trust and emotional honesty. As the night deepened, Brenna confessed a lingering worry that the past might still shadow their future. Daniel held her tightly. No past, no mistake, no secret can touch what we have now. I promise. Our love is stronger than any shadow. The reassurance brought tears and laughter, a mix of relief and warmth that only true love could create. With trust fully restored, playful teasing turned into gentle touches, lingering hugs, and whispered promises. Every secret shared, every fear admitted, only amplified their desire and connection. They realized that intimacy wasn't just physical, it was emotional, mental, and spiritual. By the end of the night, Brenna and Daniel lay together, hearts racing, hands entwined, whispering words of love and devotion. The trials of the past, the doubts, the secrets, they had survived it all. And now their love was unleashed, free, passionate, and ready to face the world. Their hearts were fully, completely, and irrevocably joined. Brenna lay curled against Daniel's chest, her hair splayed across his pillow, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat both grounding and intoxicating. She felt a tremor of awe wash over her, a mixture of contentment and reverence for the journey that had brought them here. Months of challenges, secrets, fights, confessions, and reconciliations had transformed something tentative into something unshakably real. Her chest expanded and contracted, taking in each quiet inhale of the morning, savoring the stillness before the world demanded their attention. She shifted slightly, pressing a kiss against the side of his chest, feeling the faint rise and fall of his breath. Daniel stirred awake, his lips curving into a smile that could melt any doubt lingering in her heart. "Good morning, beautiful," he murmured, voice still thick with sleep. "Sleep well." Warmed. "I was just thinking about us," she admitted. "About everything. How far we've come. How much I need you, Daniel. And not just need you. I want you. I want us like this for as long as we can." The calm morning that Brenna and Daniel had shared lingered like a fragile promise, but by late afternoon, a tension they hadn't felt in months began to creep back into their lives. The sunlight, which had felt warm and intimate, now cast long shadows across the city streets, reflecting the uncertainty Brenna felt deep in her chest. Daniel had just returned from a brief errand when Brenna's phone buzzed insistently on the kitchen counter. She picked it up with a slight hesitation, her heart tightening as she saw the name flashing across the screen. Marcus. The city outside had grown quiet under the deep indigo sky, but inside Brenna's apartment, the tension lingered like a fragile thread. Marcus's call from earlier had unsettled her in ways she hadn't expected. The past had returned not just as a memory, but as a looming presence, threatening to seep into the sanctuary she had built with Daniel. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at him, seeing the unshakable trust, the deep devotion, and the unwavering strength he offered. She realized that love, true love, wasn't just about the joyful, light-filled moments, it was about the difficult, raw, unguarded moments where fear and vulnerability threatened to overpower you. Their first kiss was tentative, exploring, but charged with months of longing. It deepened quickly, slow and deliberate, a dance of lips and hands that spoke the language their hearts had been yearning to express. Every brush of skin, every sigh, every gentle tug wove them closer together. Time seemed to bend around them, the sound of rain against the windows blending with the rhythm of their shared heartbeat. Daniel's hands roamed with tender insistence, memorizing the curves and lines of her body as if engraving them into memory. Brenna responded in kind, her fingers tracing patterns across his shoulders, down his back, feeling the warmth and strength of him beneath her touch. Every gasp, every sigh, every stolen whisper of his name was a thread weaving the tapestry of passion and trust that bound them irreversibly. The quiet intimacy of the previous night still lingered in Brenna's apartment like a warm blanket, but the peace was fragile. The echo of Marcus's voice from earlier in the week haunted her thoughts. She had hoped that distance and time would render his presence inconsequential, but now, with him potentially poised to disrupt everything, she knew the past demanded to be confronted, not avoided. Daniel, sensing the tension even before Brenna spoke, took her hands in his. "Talk to me," he said softly, his gaze unwavering. "What's on your mind?" He stepped toward her, each movement slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial, as if the world itself had agreed to pause and witness this moment. "Brenna," he whispered, his voice low, trembling with emotion. "You're mesmerizing. I can't stop thinking about you, wanting you, needing you." Her breath caught in her throat. "Daniel," she whispered back, her voice soft, almost fragile, yet infused with an undeniable yearning. Her hands trembled slightly as they lifted to rest against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her fingers, a rhythm that mirrored her own growing anticipation. The night was heavy with tension, a weight that pressed against Brenna's chest as she and Daniel stepped onto the balcony, the city below glowing faintly under the rain-soaked streets. The storm that had seemed to calm hours ago had returned with a vengeance, rain lashing against the glass and wind tugging at their clothes. The elements mirrored the turmoil in Brenna's heart, a reminder that even after passion, confession, and trust, the past could still demand its reckoning. The night wrapped them in its calm embrace, a sacred witness to their commitment, and Brenna realized with profound clarity. Love wasn't about fleeting moments or temporary passion. It was about choice, courage, and unwavering dedication. And they had chosen, fully and irrevocably, each other. No shadow, no storm, no secret could ever undo that. "You're awake," Daniel murmured, voice husky from sleep, brushing a soft kiss across the top of her head. "I've been awake," Brenna replied softly, her eyes half-lidded, savoring the quiet warmth of the moment. "Just listening to you, feeling us." Daniel smiled, a slow, contented curve of his lips. "Us," he repeated as though tasting the word, feeling its weight and truth. "I could stay like this forever. No chaos, no storms. Just us." She shifted slightly, resting her forehead against his chest. "Forever sounds good," she whispered, letting herself linger in the simple poetry of the word. "After everything, all the fear and shadows, I never imagined it could feel like this. Safe, perfect, complete." Daniel lifted her chin gently, their eyes meeting in the soft morning light. "It's because we chose it," he said simply. "All of it. Every challenge, every confession, every storm we faced. It led us here. And we made it ours. Brenna, love isn't just passion or desire, it's this. Quiet, unshakable, unbroken. This is the truest part of it." Brenna felt tears prick her eyes, a mix of gratitude, relief, and overwhelming joy. "I know," she whispered, "and I never want to let it go. I don't ever want to forget this feeling. Or you." Daniel's hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away a stray tear as he leaned down to kiss her softly. "Then we won't forget," he said, voice low and tender. "We'll remember every moment, every heartbeat, every whispered promise. Because that's how love lasts. Not just in grand gestures or dramatic moments, but in quiet, endless devotion." They spent the morning wrapped in each other, speaking in soft tones, their words often dissolving into laughter or shared silences. Every glance, every touch, was a reaffirmation of trust, a celebration of survival, a quiet declaration that their love was more than passion. It was a foundation strong enough to weather anything life could throw at them. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the love, desire, and devotion that had built over months of trials and triumphs. The kiss was long, lingering, and infinite, a physical embodiment of every promise, every whispered word, every shared heartbeat that had brought them to this pinnacle moment. They pulled back slightly, foreheads pressed together, breathing in sync. "I can't believe this is real," Brenna murmured, tears streaming down her cheeks. "After everything, we're here." "We are," Daniel replied, voice steady yet husky with emotion. "And we're going to stay here. Together. Forever. Nothing can take this from us. Not the past, not fear, not time. We've built something unbreakable, Brenna, and now we seal it." They watched the sun sink completely below the horizon, the sky exploding in shades of violet, gold, and crimson. The city lights blinked awake one by one, reflecting in the ring on her finger a symbol of love, resilience, and choice. The air was filled with the gentle hum of life, distant cars, and the soft rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. But for Brenna and Daniel, it was a universe suspended in perfect balance, a moment where nothing existed but them, their hearts, and the eternal bond they had chosen to forge. "I love you," Brenna whispered, pressing a lingering kiss to his lips. "More than words, more than anything I've ever known." "And I love you," Daniel replied, holding her close. "More than life itself, more than the stars, more than forever can contain." The sun was dipping low, casting a warm amber glow across the city as Brenna and Daniel stood at the edge of the rooftop garden, the cool breeze brushing against their faces. After days of storms, revelations, and quiet reflections, they had arrived at a place of clarity, strength, and unshakable love. This moment high above the bustling streets, surrounded by soft rustling leaves and the golden glow of twilight, felt like a universe created just for them. Daniel took Brenna's hands in his, holding them firmly but gently. His eyes, deep and unwavering, held hers as though searching for every thought, every heartbeat, every unspoken fear, and meeting each one with steadfast devotion. "Brenna," he began, voice low and reverent, "we've faced everything together. The storms, the shadows, the secrets. And we came out stronger every time. Tonight, I want to make something official. Not just words, not just promises, but a bond that can't be broken by anything." Brenna's heart raced, emotions cascading through her like a tidal wave. "Daniel, what are you saying?" she asked softly, though a knowing smile tugged at her lips. He reached into his pocket and drew a small velvet box. Opening it, he revealed a ring, its simple elegance capturing the reflection of the setting sun. "Brenna, will you be my forever? Will you marry me? Not just for a day or a year, but for every moment of our lives. Will you choose me as I choose you eternally?" Tears welled in Brenna's eyes, but her smile was radiant, unrestrained, full of love, relief, and undeniable certainty. "Yes," she whispered, voice trembling yet resolute. "Yes, Daniel. I choose you. Forever." Daniel slid the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the overwhelming joy and gravity of the promise forever had begun. As the sun climbed higher, spilling golden light into their sanctuary, Brenna closed her eyes, letting the warmth and calm fill her. "Forever," she whispered again, smiling into Daniel's chest. "Forever," he echoed, holding her close, hearts beating in perfect unison. The quiet, tender morning became a sacred testament to their love, a reminder that the most powerful emotions are often expressed in stillness, touch, and unwavering presence. The sun was dipping low, casting a warm amber glow across the city as Brenna and Daniel stood at the edge of the rooftop garden, the cool breeze brushing against their faces. After days of storms, revelations, and quiet reflections, they had arrived at a place of clarity, strength, and unshakable love. This moment high above the bustling streets, Surrounded by soft rustling leaves and the golden glow of twilight felt like a universe created just for them. Tears welled in Brenna's eyes, but her smile was radiant, unrestrained, full of love, relief, and undeniable certainty. "Yes," she whispered, voice trembling yet resolute. "Yes, Daniel. I choose you. Forever." The world could change, life could challenge, and time could march on, but Brenna and Daniel would remain steadfast, hand in hand, heart to heart, soul to soul. And so, under the blanket of stars and the gentle hum of the city, two hearts promised forever, eternally bound, unbreakable, and wholly devoted to each other. Thanks you for watching this story till the end. Your time means a lot to us. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing romance story.